Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another Astroveo Blender tutorial. Today, we're going to be making a scene from the new Dune film, Dune 2. It's the beautiful scene that you probably saw in the trailer where you have a double solar eclipse on the setting sun in the desert sky. I really, really love the cinematography in Dune, and that scene is no exception. And it turns out making something like that is pretty straightforward in Blender. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So let's take a look at that scene. The key components in it are the sand and the sand dunes that are extending off into the distance, fading away into the mist. That mist and dust rises up and causes this beautiful dark orange sun, which is of course being eclipsed by Arrakis's 2 moons. And of course, an eclipse like that is actually possible, not on Earth, but there are multiple solar eclipse. There are multiple moons. Planets with multiple moons in our solar system. And so this can happen even though we've never caught one, even by chance. But so we're going to learn how to make this. So let's start with the sand dunes. There's a really easy way to make sand dunes in Blender. So you're going to open up Blender and just hit A to select everything and X to delete it. And now I'm just going to save this as tutorial.blend. And now you're going to add a plane with Shift A, Mesh, and then Plane. Scale this plane up by a big factor, something like 10, by hitting S and then 10 to scale. And then you're going to hit Tab to go into edit mode, and you can see now we can control the vertices of the object in edit mode. So just hit A to make sure all the vertices are selected, select W, and then click Subdivide. And now do this a couple times until the grid is fairly dense. You could even go one more if you want. Okay, perfect. So now you can tab out of edit mode. In the right panel here, you want to go down to the Modifier tab, click Add Modifier, and then we're going to click on Displace, which is over here. So this is a displacement modifier. We're going to create a new displacement texture, which will pop up in this tab down here, and click on Image and Movie and change it to Voronoi, and you're going to see we're going to get this really strong shape. But if we lower the strength of this shape down to like 0.1, you can see it looks almost perfectly like sand dunes. We're pretty much there already. You can play with the size a little bit. I like to change the size here to be something a little bit bigger so that we have a little bit smaller, so we have a little bit more sand dunes packed into the area. It gives it a better feeling of scale. But we're pretty much good to go. You can hit spacebar and then type smooth to shade the object smooth, which will remove some of those vertices. And you can play with the strength to kind of get something that looks, plausible. I like something like this. It's good enough for now. So find a view that you like in among these sand dunes, and you're going to want to add a new camera. So by Shift A, going down to Camera, and then hitting Control Option 0, or just going to, if you don't have keyboard shortcuts enabled, just going to View, and then Align View, and Align Active Camera to View. This will point the camera where you're looking. And now you're going to use the G and XYZ keys to move the camera around until you have a view you like. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to get the camera kind of pointed out into the distance over the dunes. Something like that's probably fine. We're already a good way there. This is looking pretty cool already. So we're going to add some really quick lighting and texturing to these sand dunes, like super quick. So first things first, click on Light, Shift A to add a light. We're going to add a sun source, and we want to see what the sun source is doing. You can hit G and Z to bring it up. Now hit Z and go into rendered view. And I think we're in Eevee right now, but we're going to actually want to switch into cycles by going over to this tab over here, the render properties in the right panel, selecting cycles from the render engine menu, and you can change to a GPU if you have it. To make this render a little bit easier, you can click on the camera, or you don't have to click on the camera, but if you go to the output properties and then select render region, it will crop it to a region over here. It'll crop the rendering to just the camera view. Okay, so now we've got the sun, and if we hit R, we can move it around and change the way the shadows are pointing. Now we're going to want this kind of facing us dead on because the sun is, of course, setting. And this is the wrong direction. Let's try. There we go. So the sun is setting, and it's going to be setting behind the dunes, and so that's where the light's going to be coming from. So we kind of want the lighting to reflect that. So something like this where the sun is pointing low on the horizon towards the camera is what we want. You can see it looks really cool on the dunes there. We're going to add a really quick dune texture. Just split the view by clicking and dragging up in the corner here. Select the view button over here, the editor type, go to shader editor. You can hit N to remove that toolbox. You want to right click on the dunes, make sure they're selected, add a new node, we can call it sand. You can go on the internet and find a sand texture. I just Googled sand texture seamless and found any one of these will work, as long as it's seamless. I just use the first one, honestly. You're not going to be able to see the sand that well, so it doesn't matter. It just needs to be seamless. So you're going to click on your principled BSDF shader here, and if you have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled, which if you don't, go to Edit, Preferences, search for Node Wrangler under Add-ons, and check off Node Wrangler. If you hit Control T, it will add automatically an image texture, a mapping node, and a texture coordinate node. If you don't have those, you can add those manually by using Shift A and then searching for each node as needed. So we're going to switch the texture coordinate output from UV to generated. And then we're going to load in our image texture, which is just sand here. Now you can see it doesn't look very good. It looks a little like the skin of a sandworm. So we're going to use Shift A, add a value node, plug the value node into the scale factor, and bump this up to like 30. And so now the sand should be too fine to be seen. You can play with that until you get something you like. 25 is probably good. You'll notice it's a little bit better than having no texture at all. But the reality is you're not going to be able to see the texture much anyway. You just kind of want the color roughly right. So now that we've got that, let's first, you can see there's like a lot of these sand reflections. I really don't like that. Because sand is not that reflective. So you can change the specular value, which will change the reflectiveness, or you can turn the roughness up and down, which will do the same thing, or something similar. And so I'm turning the roughness way up. I want like barely any light kind of glancing off of these dunes. Okay, and that's nice. Now you can turn the metallic up and down. It'll just darken the sand dunes. That's not what metallic actually does. Metallic makes it very reflective. But in this case, I found it was a useful slider for making the dunes look a little bit darker, like they do in the trailer. Okay, so we're all good there. We're actually almost all set to start adding the sun and the moons. So this is, again, really easy step here. Just go Shift A, add a sphere to the scene, hit spacebar, shade it smooth, and you've got your sun. So move it out way into the distance, and you can hit 0 on your number pad to get back to the camera view. Make it bigger, as big as you'd like your sun to be. And now you're gonna hit New, and we're gonna give this thing an emission shader. So you can see the color here is nothing. So we're gonna give it like an orangey color, and we're gonna turn the emission strength up quite a bit. So try to find that good color combination. You can see it's like kind of reflective. We don't want any of that. So turn off the roughness up all the way. Turn down the specular. We don't want this thing reflecting at all. Turn down the base color too. We don't want this to have any color besides the emission. So play around until you find kind of like a ruddy orange, and it might take a bit of playing. If you'd like, you can have more fine control over the emission color too. So if you can pipe in a color. Well, that's the same thing basically, but you can like use a color ramp, for example. If you plug in a mapping node into this, you can play around with that and try to get like a fade across the surface. But that's a little bit too much for this tutorial. So we're just gonna try and find that color that we like. I think that looks fine. A lot of this is playing around, so don't be afraid to try to experiment and figure out what you think looks good. Now you're gonna right click on the sun, make sure it's selected, hit Shift D to duplicate it, and pull the duplicated sun just a bit in front. And you're going to want to turn off all that emission stuff that we did in that texture. So you can just get rid of the texture completely, add a new one, and just make sure that the surface color is black. Although even just a gray is pretty good. I actually, when I was making the test render, I actually think I kept it at the same color as like the default material because I wanted it to blend in with the background. But the important thing is no roughness. Get rid of any reflections and all that stuff, and you should be good. So now you can move this moon around, and you can see if you play with the sizes, it gives you that solar eclipse effect. So hit Shift D to duplicate it again, and you get your 2 solar eclipses, and there you go. We're almost done. So it already looks pretty cool. We're going to add one last touch, which is like the dust in the air that sort of fades the horizon away. That's super easy to add. So we're going to add a Shift A,
add a cube, blow this cube up, make it kind of flattish, and blow that up. You're going to want it to be just in front of the camera. And now you're going to go to give it a new texture, get rid of the principled BSDF, and then add a volume scatter node. And now first let's go into the camera view to see what we'll see what this does. So take the volume output, plug it into the volume input, and lower the density to like 0.01. And so you can see it's like adding some dust in the air. If we keep bumping this up, it'll add more and more dust in the air. And if we move it around, we can cause, we can cause the stuff to fade away faster or slower depending on how we want it to look. So play with that until you find something you like. Once again, there's a lot of experimentation here. One other thing is you can control the height here to get a fall off in the atmosphere. So if you hit S and then Z, you can make this thinner and then move it down. And now you can see there's like a gradient of the dust in the air. So like it's a little bit lighter up top than it is down here. And okay, we're honestly almost done. All you got to do now, just hit render, and we're going to do a little bit of compositing. Actually, just for the purposes of this, I'm going to change the rendering time. I don't want it to take more than like a couple seconds to render because it doesn't need to for a simple scene like this. And it's going to do the denoising, so we should see it smooth out everything. Nice. Okay. So that looks pretty cool. So go over to your compositing node, click use node, your compositing tab, sorry. Click use nodes and get rid of the backdrop by clicking on it there. You can hit N to get rid of this thing. Open a new window into view. Click image editor, change the view to image editor, change the image to viewer node. And now hit Control Shift and click on this to output to a viewer node. So now we can see whatever we do in the compositor, it'll show up here. So, you can just add some glare. And plug that into the viewer in the compositor, change it to fog glow, drop the threshold way down. And now it adds a little bit of glare to the sun. And this is obviously a bit too bright for how late in the day it's supposed to be. So if we add a hue, saturation, and value node, plug it once again into the viewer node and composite node, and just drop the value down by quite a bit. You can see it kind of lowers the brightness of the scene. And so that's it. I spent a lot more time playing around with it to get this to look more like the scene from Dune. But honestly, like, this is pretty much all the steps. So just play around with this and try to get something you like and show us in the comments your epic space scenes. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.